Today we're going to cover Ezra chapter 7. Last time we left Ezra chapter 6 and we jumped to Esther and we covered the story of Esther. And after we finished the story of Esther, so we're coming back to chapters Ezra 7. So let's read some portion and then we'll continue. Now, after this, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra the son of Zariah the son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amariah, son of Azariah, son of Merioth, son of Zerahiah, son of Utzi, son of Buki, son of Abishua, son of Pinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, chief priest. This Ezra went up from Babylonia. He was a scribe, skilled in the law of Moses that the Lord, God of Israel, had given, and King granted him all that he asked for. The hand of the Lord his God was on him, and there went up also to Jerusalem in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king some of the people of Israel, and some of the priests and the Levites and singers and gatekeepers and the temple servants. And Ezra came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of the king. For on the first day of the 1st month he began to go up from Babylonia, and on the first day of the 5th month he came to Jerusalem. For the good hand of his good God was on him. For Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord, and to do it, and to teach his statutes and rules in Israel. All right, let's just take a look at this, chapter 7. And as we just go through this story here, and since we're jumping from Esther, so let's just take a look at. As we were going through a story of Esther, I went over all the years that the story of Esther that occurred and why they were in the situations they were in, and so forth. And if you go back to Esther for a moment, the story was actually laid from the time when Artaxerxes actually became a king. I mean, not Artaxerxes, Ahasuerus became a king, which was the year of BC 486. And after that, he became a king, and 3 years later, which is about somewhere around 483, the story started. And then, of course, time goes by as Esther became a queen. When we jump over to chapter 2, towards the end of it, we will see on verse 16 says, "And when Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign." So the story started when the Ahasuerus became a king, and 3 years after. And then by the time that Esther was presented to the king, that was a 7th year, which is already 4 years had passed by. So we can see the progressions, and the time is actually just keep passing. And then when we just flip over to chapter 3, verse 7, it says, in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus. So as you can see here, the time is just keep moving and then just passing by. So by the time when um, the Haman tried to just remove the Israel from the land, that was the BC 474, because that was the 12th year when the king Ahasuerus became a king. So 400 BC 474 is when they decide to actually just remove the Haman. So the story is somewhere between BC 474. The story really happened. And when you're just coming back to Ezra chapter 7, and the story starts, it says that now after this, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia. So let's just take a look at it from here for a moment. So, as Esther was the story of when the king Ahasuerus was the king in Persia. But as you flip over to chapter 7, now Artaxerxes became a king. So then let's take a look at exactly who is this person. So let's just go back to our material and see what the story is. Mm-hmm. If my stuff is just showing up. Okay, let me share my screen. You see my screen? We have seen this chart quite some time. So it started from the Cyrus II, which was the Cyrus who actually established Persia and Media, right? And then Cyrus II had a sons, Cambyses the seconds, and he had a brother Bardia, but the Cambyses second actually killed the Bardia, his brothers, on the way to Egypt, right? And then after Cambyses second actually died in Egypt and never came back to Persia, and there's some pseudo Bardia, which was the um, pretended to be the Bardia, and he was driven out by the wise men, and Darius the First became the king. And Darius the First became a king, and he married to a daughter of Cyrus the Second, which is Atossa. And between Atossa and Darius the First, he had a first son. Not the first son. I'm sorry. The son Xerxes the First. Xerxes the First is the story when we actually just started here in the Esther. And then Xerxes the First is the one who actually invaded into Greece. And then we talked about the different kinds of wars that they had, Thermophiles, and they had the Salamis, and then the Platus, that they have all this war against the Greece, and then they failed it miserably. And after that, Xerxes the First died, and he was assassinated by his bodyguard, and his son became a king, which is the Artaxerxes the First. So Artaxerxes the First is the story we're actually just reading right now in Ezra chapter 7 right here. So as you can see here, the year that the Artaxerxes became a king, that was the year of 456, 465 through 424. So as you can see here, the story just moves around from place to places. It started off the Cyrus the Seconds, and then Darius the First, and Xerxes the First, and Artaxerxes. So as you can see here, the story that Ezra covered is very, very wide. It's not just something happened in a couple of years, because the story started from the time when they came back from Babylon, when Cyrus II actually released the Israelites and tell them to go back and rebuild the temple. That's where the Ezra story started. But by the time you reach the chapter 7, year has passed by. They already built a temple. At the same time, there was some story that occurred in the Esther's. And now, after Xerxes I, the king of Persia, died, and his son Artaxerxes became a king, and the story continues. So, when you think about this for a moment, from the time that Cyrus II released the orders to really go back to Israel to go back to rebuild the temple. What year was it? When we go back to the very first chapter, what year that they actually ordered them to go back? That was a BC 538. That was a BC 538. So now, from the time when he ordered them to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple, and then from the time this Artaxerxes became a king, how many years had passed by? So from the 538 to time when Artaxerxes became a king. 73 years, right? 73 years. So time has passed quite some time here, as you can see. So coming back to chapter 7, so that remember when they actually when we actually just come to chapter 7, how many years that had passed by. And when you actually look at the time when they actually came back and rebuilt the temple, remember what year they actually finished the building the temple? That was a BC 516. And then from the time when actually see chapter 7, almost a 60 year had passed from the time they rebuilt the temple. So now you kind of understand the time difference between the time when they came back to Jerusalem, when they actually finished building the temples, and the time when you reached chapter 7, how many years had passed by. So, continue on. Chapter 7 says, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra the son of Seraiah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, and so forth. And there's a person named Ezra came. And chapter 7 talks about the chronology and of Ezra. The root started from Ezra and continued to go up. And then what he actually mentioned in the story here is that when you actually look at the verse 5, son of Abishua, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the chief priest. So what we can see here is that Ezra is the descendants of Aaron, which is the very first high priest of Israel. So what it tells us that Ezra is the family of priest. Automatically, as I mentioned when we go through the book of law of Moses, not everyone can become a priest. Just because they're holy, just because they're good, does not mean they can become a priest. Priesthood could only come from the family of Aaron. No one else, even if you are Levites, you cannot just become a priest unless you're descendants of Aaron. So what Ezra is pointing out is that I came from the root of Aaron. I am priest is what he's actually talking. He just wants to making sure that I'm like nobody, came from Israel. I came from the Aaron's family. And he's just, listing out. And then verse 6 says, this Ezra went up from Babylonia. He was the scribe, skilled in the law of Moses that the Lord, the God of Israel, had given, and king granted him all that he asked for. The head of the Lord his God was on him. This actually gives us a good understanding who Ezra is. Now, after he lists out that he came down from the family of Aaron, but he says, I'm a scribe. So let me ask you this. What does a scribers do? When we say scribe in the Bible, they're the one who copies the scroll, which means back then, obviously, there's no way for them to make a copy of the original book of law. So somebody has to write it and copy exactly word by word. They have to just look at it, write it, look at it, write it, and they have to actually write those. That's why there are not many scrolls available, because that has to be done by hand. And imagine if you actually make a mistake, then what do? You have to start all over again from the very beginning. Why? Because remember, it's not like a piece of paper like we have, right? They write on the piece of actually, the animal skin. And it's one piece, right? When you ever look at the scroll, it's a one piece. They rolled it into the two small sticks. So if you make any mistake whatsoever in the way you are actually just copying, you have to start from the very beginning. So you could imagine how careful they are not to make that mistake. And the process of actually making that copy of the Bible is it's taking long time. So by doing that, automatically scribes knows exactly what they're copying. Therefore, scribe is the one who knows the Bible the most. Because they have to continue to read, they have to actually copy, right? So scribe is the one who knows the Bible the most. And Ezra claimed he is the scriber, which means instead of he's actually introducing himself as I'm a priest, he's actually saying I'm a scriber, which means he is the priest, but at the same time, he's the scriber. And what kind of person he is, it actually says here, he was a scribe skilled in the law of Moses. So that means I know law of Moses very well because I'm a scribe. That the Lord, the God of Israel, had given. Who's given? God has given him what? And king granted him all that he asked for. So what kind of person that Ezra is? He's the kind of person who's respected and highly treated in Persia, that whatever he asks, the king will grant him. You could imagine the king is just giving him anything that he asks for. So if you look at it from that perspective, Artaxerxes in the history, not in the Bible context, in the human history perspective, Artaxerxes is not a good king. He was a madman, and the human history says it would have been better if he was not a king. That's how bad he was. He was not a good king. He was literally a madman. However, he was good to Ezra. Why? Because God made him to be generous and be good to Ezra. And at the same time, Ezra was good to the king, and Ezra was very highly respected man in Persia. If king is the one who actually granted him for anything that he asked for, it's better for him to stay in Persia. Don't you think? He has no reason to come to Israel or Jerusalem. He could have just stayed in Persia and continued to be respected, and he could receive anything that he asked for. But he did not want to stay in Persia, but he wanted to come back to Jerusalem. One of the things that you might have actually seen or through the news that you have seen in a recent news about Israel, one of the strangest things that you will see about the Jews is when the Hamas attacked the Israel and war broke up between the Hamas and Israel. And then the whole nations called all people to come back to army, because in Israel there are a lot of reserved army, and reserved army could, when they call, they usually come back. But when they're in Israel, I understand that all the reserved army could actually just join back to army and fight for their own country. The people who actually studying overseas, such as in America, they come to study here. They literally dropped everything and go back to Israel. It's not mandatory. They could refuse. They don't have to go back. They have reasons, but they don't care. They just drop everything what they do and pack up and then fly back to Israel and fight for their own country. There are not many countries, there are not many people like that. But they do, because they love their own country. They love their own people. And in the past, like Ezra, even though they could just have a pleasant life in Persia, that's not what they want. And imagine, do you think Ezra was brought as a captive to Babylon? What do you think? Yeah. So let's go back to the story again. When was the very first time that Nebuchadnezzar actually came to Jerusalem and took the first captive? What was the first invasions that Nebuchadnezzar had? That was a BC 606. Right? And now what year is it now? So do you believe that he was a captive? And not to mention about the first invasion, but the third invasion, which was the last invasions that Nebuchadnezzar came to Jerusalem and took the last captives, right? That was the fall of Judah and Jerusalem. That was the year BC 586. So based on the years that we can see, it does not make any sense that Ezra was the captive from Israel. Most likely, he was born in Babylon. He was either second generation or third generation. We don't know for sure, but definitely he's not the first generation. He was not brought from Israel at all. So with that assumption, if he's the second generation, possibly third generations, which means he has not seen Jerusalem or went to Israel before. But he has a heart to go back to Israel and Jerusalem. And the Bible tells us very clearly. Verse 7 says, "And there went up also to Jerusalem in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king some of the people of Israel, and some of the priests and Levites, singers, and a gatekeeper, and a temple servants." So, what we can see here is 7th year of Artaxerxes. So if the 7th year of Artaxerxes, what year is it now? Uh, 457 is what we're actually projecting. So 457 is the year that Ezra decide to come back to Israel. And when he came back, he did not just come back by himself, but rather he just brought more people with him. It says there is a servant, temple servants, singers, gatekeepers, Levites, and priests. And verse 9 says, "For on the first day of the first month he began to go up from Babylonia, and on the first day of the fifth month he came to Jerusalem." So what month he left? First month. First month, according to Israel's calendar, what month is it? Abib month, but after they came back from Babylon, they called it something different. What do they call? Nisan month. So Nisan month is when they actually left. And then by the time he actually arrived, what month is it? Now it says, Ezra came to Jerusalem in the fifth month. Fifth month is according to Israel's calendar. That is Ab month. On the first day of the first month, he began to go up from Babylonia, and on the first day of the fifth month, he came to Jerusalem, for the good hand of his God was on him. Important part is, what was actually with him? It says, for the good hand of his God was on him. It's not the king's hands was with him, but the God's hands was with him. When he decided to come back to Jerusalem, God's hand was with him. For Ezra had to set his heart to study the law of the Lord and to do it and to teach his statute and rule in Israel. Verse 10 specifically talks about the purpose why he wanted to come back to Israel. So verse 10 is the most important part of the chapter 7 as we read. What was the whole purpose he wanted to come back to Israel? Why did he want to give up his pleasant life in Persia and wanted to come back to Israel? And he had very strong reason. The reason that he came to Israel is because, verse 10, I want you to just kind of put a line under it. Set his heart to study the law of the Lord. So first thing he did when he was in Persia, he set his heart to study the Lord of the law of the Lord, which is the law of Moses. So he studied in Persia. The why he studied the law of the Lord is because to do it and to teach his statute and rules in Israel. Believe it or not, Ezra was the whole purpose why I actually studied what I did. He was the actual inspiration for me as well. I did the same thing. I studied to teach the Bible. I had the same intentions and purpose why I study Bible. Not only just build my faith, and also at the same time I wanted to know the Bible and get to know God first, but at the same time I want to just tell the world about who Jesus is. And in order for me to do that, that means I need to know the word of the Lord first before I can speak about God's love. So Ezra was my inspirations why I actually started this Bible sharing. Ezra, if I remember, I probably mentioned a few times in the past, there are a few teachers or the rabbi in Israel. And out of a many well-known and respected rabbi, Ezra is number one when it comes to the best rabbi in Israel history. And as you can see why. Continue on. This is the copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave it to Ezra, the priest, the scribe, man learning in matters of commandments of the Lord and his statute for Israel. So verse 11 clearly stated what kind of person he is. What is it? Ezra the priest, the scribe, a man learned in matters of the commandments of the Lord, and his statute for Israel. So this describes what kind of person he is. Artaxerxes. So from verse 12 through verse 26. So from verse 12 to through verse 26 is the letter that Artaxerxes actually wrote and gave it to Ezra. And these verse 12 through 26 is written in Aramaic, not in Hebrew, in original context. Verse 12 says, Artaxerxes, the king of kings, to Ezra, the priest, the scribe of the law of the God of heaven, peace, and now law of the God, and now I make a decree that anyone of the people of Israel or their priests or Levites in my kingdom who freely offers to go to Jerusalem may go with you. For you are sent by the king and his 7 counselors to make inquiries about Judah and Jerusalem according to the law of your God, which is your hand, and go to carry the silver and gold that the king and his counselor have freely offered to the God of Israel, whose dwelling is in Jerusalem, with all the silvers and gold that you shall find in the whole province of Babylonia, and with the free will offerings of the people and the priest, vowed willingly for the house of their God that is in Jerusalem. With this money then you shall with all diligence buy bulls, rams, and lambs, with their grain offerings and their drink offerings, and you shall offer them on the altar of the house of your God that is in Jerusalem. Whatever seems good to you and your brothers to do with the rest of the silvers and gold, you may do according to the will of your God. The vessels that have been given you for the service of the house of your God, you shall deliver before the God of Jerusalem, and whatever else is required for the house of your God, which it falls to you to provide, you may provide it out of the king's treasury. And I, Artaxerxes the king, make a decree to all the treasurers in the province beyond the river, whatever Ezra the priest, the scribe of the law of the God of heaven, requires of you, let it be done with all diligence, up to 100 talents of silver, 100 cores of wheat, 100 beth of wines, 100 beth of oil, and salt, without prescribing how much. Whatever is decreed by the God of heaven, let it be done in full for the house of the God of heaven. Lest his wrath be against the realm of the kings and his sons, we also notify you that it shall not be lawful to impose tribute, custom, or toll on any one of the priests, the Levites, and singers, and doorkeepers, and temple servants, or other servants of this house of God. And you, Ezra, according to the wisdom of your God, that is in your hand, appoint magistrates and judges who may judge all the people in the province beyond the river, all such as know the law of your God, and those who do not know them you shall teach. Whoever will not obey the law of your God and the law of the king, let judgment be strictly executed on him, whether for death or for banishment or for confiscations of his goods or for imprisonment. Blessed be the Lord, the God of our Father, who put such things as this into heart of the kings, to beautify the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem, and who extended to me his steadfast love before the king and his counselor, and before all the king's mighty officers. I took courage, for the hand of the Lord my God was on me, and I gathered leading men from Israel to go up with me. So as you can see, the letters that Artaxerxes had written and given it to Ezra, for he's returning to Jerusalem. And as you can see, he's been very supportive, and he's willing to give anything that Ezra has asked for. But when you look at this story, if Ezra was a very respected man, he was the man of good heart. Obviously, he would not actually ask for something for out of his own greed, right? But he's a very honest man, and he's a very royal person. And whatever he asked, he'd ask for, to be helpful for the people of Israel and in Jerusalem, not for his own sake, not for his own richness, but rather he wanted to just have enough materials and the stuff that he go back to Jerusalem and give offerings to the Lord, and what he could use to really teach the people of Jerusalem as well. That's exactly what he asked for. But when you think about it, as I just mentioned, Artaxerxes was a madman. He was not a good king. However, when you think about his father, Xerxes the First, he was generous to Judah and the people of Israel as well, as we saw in the book of Esther. He was generous to the people of Israel. Therefore, I am sure Artaxerxes was somewhat generous to Israel and Jews because of his father as well. We don't know whether Esther was his mother or not. We don't know. Obviously, the Bible does not talk about it, or the human history doesn't talk about it, whose son Artaxerxes is from. But at least he was influenced by his father, Xerxes the First. Even though he was not a good man, but he was generally, pleased with the Jews and Israelites. So what he's actually writing here is he's asking people, anyone in his kingdom who's willing to go with Ezra, please go with him. He's just recommending, and he's actually just suggesting anyone who is willing to go back, go back. And this is very similar to what the Cyrus had done. Cyrus, when he wrote the letters to the people, he did very similar. Anyone who is willing to go back to Jerusalem, go back. As I mentioned, many of the second generations and the third generations of the people who were born in Babylon, Babylonia and Persia, of course, is well developed, the country, and everything was just much better than other places. So when it comes to um, living in the better societies and living in a better cultures and living in a better place is probably good for most of the people. And they were born and they raised in Babylon. So therefore, they're more comfortable living in Babylon. But there are still second generations and third generations of people who is willing to go back to Jerusalem. And as we have seen in the story of Esther, there are a lot of people who remained in Susa, and a lot of people remained in Babylon and other region as well. When Joshua and Zerubbabel came to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple, of course, a lot of the first generation of people and some second generation came to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. However, not everyone came to Jerusalem. There are other people who stayed in Babylon and other regions and lived the way they were living. But there are still people who are willing to go back to Jerusalem with Ezra. And Artaxerxes was encouraging them to go back to Jerusalem if they want. And not only that, verse 14 says, "For you are sent by the king and his 7 counselors to make inquiries about Judah and Jerusalem according to the law of your God, which is in your hand, and also to carry the silver and gold that the king and his counselors have freely offered to the God of Israel, whose dwelling is in Jerusalem, with all the silvers and gold that you shall find it in the whole province of Babylonia, and with the freewill offerings of the people, and the priest vowed willingly for the house of your God that is in Jerusalem." So what he's saying is, you can take gold and silver, whatever you wish, take it with you. They're not coming back with the empty hand, but rather they actually bring lots of gold and silver with them. And the king is encouraging them to really take it with them. What is important here is verse 16 says at the end, "With the free will offerings of the people and the priest vowed willingly for the house of their God that is in Jerusalem." What's important is the word willingly. Not forced. Anyone who's willingly. This is exactly when Moses actually gave the first offering. He did not take things from the people. When they're ready to build the tabernacle, they received the offering from the people. People who's willingly to offer, they willingly give their offerings. Moses never take anything by force. People came willingly to offer to the Lord to build the tabernacle. Why is it important? Church must run by the people who's willing to build God's temples and his church, not by force. It has to be a willing heart. If anyone is forced to do something, God will not accept. You give with your own free will to give things to the Lord. Your heart, your time, your money, for whatever you offer to the Lord. It is not by force, not by anything else, but you have to have that heart to give it to the Lord. That's what God accepts. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. And verse 18 also says, whatever seems good to you and your brothers to do, with the rest of the silver and gold, you may do according to will of your God. Once again, the will of your God. The vessels that have been given you for the service of the house of your God, you shall deliver before the God of Jerusalem, and whatever else is required for the house of your God, which it falls to you to provide, you may provide it without the king's provided out of the king's treasury, which means not only people can take whatever they have, their gold and silver, but king is offering whatever you need. I will open up my treasury. Take it, whatever you need. He's giving it with open heart, that he's willing to open up his treasury for people to take it. And not only he's opening up his treasury, but he's also writing actually letters. And verse 21 says, and I, Artaxerxes the king, make a decree to all the treasurers in the province beyond the river, whatever Ezra the priest, the scribe of the law of the God of heaven, requires of you, let it be done with all diligence. So, what the king of Persia is saying is, not only take whatever Ezra wants to take it from my own treasury, but also I'm writing a letters to the people at that region. If Ezra asks you to take some from your treasury, open up for him so he can let him take whatever he asks. He's being very, very generous. Right? He's very, very generous. Why he does what he does? Because he trusts Ezra. Because Ezra has built the trust with the king that he will not do for his own sake, but he will do whatever is necessary for him to do to really just take money and treasure that he take it to Jerusalem to do what? To teach the God's word. Whatever you need. And also to offer to your God, take it, whatever you want. God is actually moved Artaxerxes' heart. Let him be generous for God's work. Ezra never really just nagging for the money, but rather Artaxerxes is the one who offered this to Ezra, even though Ezra didn't ask that much. And verse 23 says, whatever is decreed by the God of heaven, let it be done in full for the house of God of heaven, lest his wrath be against the realm of the king and his sons. Obviously, Artaxerxes does not believe the God of Israel, but he respects the God that Ezra believed. And verse 24 says, we also notify you that it shall not be lawful to impose the tribute, custom, or toll on anyone of the priests, the Levites, singers, and doorkeepers, temple servants, or servant of this house of God. So what he's ordering is, when they're actually leaving from Babylon and going back to Jerusalem, on their way back to Jerusalem, none of the province, none of the governor in my kingdom will not impose any taxes, any tolls, any tribute, anything. Do not ask them for it. Let them pass through without collecting anything at all. If you do, I will come after you. So he literally opens the door for Ezra and the people who is willing to go back to Jerusalem. Nobody can impose anything to them. Because back then, when they passed through the certain path, they actually collect the toll, they received the tribute, they received all kinds of things. So imagine if people are moving from one regions to another regions, and obviously you will go through bridges and tolls and tunnels, right? And the president is saying, the people who's moving from this region to the other region, do not accept any tolls from them. Everything is open for them. Let them pass through. Right? That's what Artaxerxes is saying to the people in his kingdom. Do not impose any taxes, tribute, tolls, anything at all. So he's literally just giving an open path for them to go back to Jerusalem. And verse 25 and 26 clearly says, and you, Ezra, is actually telling Ezra to do certain things, according to the wisdom of your God that is in your hand. So Artaxerxes knows that God is with him. Even though he doesn't believe the God of Israel, he knows that God is with Ezra. Appoint magistrates and judges who may judge all the people in the province beyond the river, all such as know the law of your God, and those who do not know them, you shall teach. So, not only Ezra decided to teach his own people, Artaxerxes is actually telling Ezra to do this. Teach your own people about the Lord of God that you know. God is with you. Whoever will not obey the law of your God and law of the king, let judgment be strictly executed on him, whether for death or for banishment or confiscation of his goods or for imprisonment. If you don't listen to God's words that Ezra will teach, you may face either death, imprisonment, or confiscation of his goods, or banishment. Well, king is the one who's telling, if you don't listen to God's word, this may happen to you. The king is saying this. And obviously, Ezra was very pleased with what Artaxerxes was offering. So verse 27 says, Blessed be the Lord, the God of our father, who put such a thing as this into the heart of the kings, to beautify the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem. Who actually made Artaxerxes to be really sentimental and be supportive and gentle to Ezra and offering all this kind of privilege? God did. God literally put this to put hard on Artaxerxes and let him be generous and offer all these things that he's offering. And who's extended it to me, he's a steadfast love before the king and his counselors, and before all the king's mighty officers, I took courage. For the hand of the Lord my God was on me, and I gathered leading men from Israel to go up with me. So what Ezra is claiming is that I took courage, for the hands of the Lord my God was on me. So Ezra clearly knows that God is with him. And because he believed that God is with him, he claims, I'm encouraged. I don't know what might happen on my path. I don't know what happens when I arrived in Jerusalem. Once again, even though he was a respected man in Persia and even by the king, people does not know about Ezra in Jerusalem. But he's encouraged because he knows that God is with him. This is the very, very important part. We don't know what future it will bring. We don't know what our future is like. However, we can be encouraged when we believe that God is with me. If we trust that God is with me, we can be in peace. And even though there are many difficulties awaiting for us, we can trust in the Lord because we believe that God is with me. That is the difference between the believer and non-believer. Non-believer, they only trust what they have and what they own. Non-believer, there's nothing else they can hold on to and trust. So what they can trust is what they own. Their money, their fame, their knowledge, their skills, their family, their friends, their connections, their network, whatever they have. That's what they rely on. But when they exhaust, when they don't get any help from the things that they actually relied on, what happens? They despair. They fall. They have nothing else to hold on to. But the difference of the Christians are, we don't trust what we own and what we have, but rather we trust in the Lord. Even though I don't have any things, I trust in the Lord. And I trust that God is with me. I trust God loves me. And His way is much better than my way. That is the faith that the Christians have. That's why we can be in peace. Chapter 8. These are the heads of their father's house, and this is the genealogy of those who went up with me from Babylonia in the reign of Artaxerxes the king, of the sons of Phinehas, Gershom, the sons of Ithamar, Daniel, of the son of David, Hattush, of the sons of Shechaniah, who was of the sons of Parosh, Zechariah, with whom were registered 150 men. Of the sons of Pahath Moab, Elihonai, the son of Zerahiah, and with them 200 men. Of the sons of Jatu, Shechaniah, the son of Zahaziel, and with them 300 men. Of the sons of Adin, Abed, sons of Jonathan, and with him 50 men. Of the sons of Elam, Jehiah, the son of Athaliah, and with him 70 men. Of the sons of Shephatiah, Zebadiah, the son of Mikael, and with him 80 men. Of the sons of Joab, Obadiah, the sons of Jehiel, and with him 218 men. Of the sons of Bani, Shelmomith, the sons of Joshipiah, and with him 160 men. Of the sons of Bebai, Zechariah, the son of Bebai, and with him 28 men. And the sons of Azgad, Jonathan, the sons of Hakatan, and with him 110 men. Of the sons of Adonikam, those who came later, their name being Elipelet, Jeuel, the Shemaiah, and with them 60 men. Of the sons of Bigvai, Utaiah, and Zachard, and with them 70 men. There are people who actually came with Ezra. And how many people? Really just to decide to come back. So approximately there are about 1,514 people who decide to come back with Ezra. So there are quite a bit of a people who decide to come back to Jerusalem along with Ezra. I gathered them to the river that runs to Ahava, and there it was camped 3 days as I reviewed the people and the priest. I found there none of the sons of Levi. Then I sent for Eleazar, Ariel, and Shemaiah, Elnathan, Jarib, and Elnathan, Nathan, Zechariah, and Meshulam, leading men, and for Arib and Elnathan, who were men of insight, and sent them to Iddo, the leading man at the place Casiphia, telling them what to say to Iddo and his brothers, and to temple servants at the place Casiphia, namely to send us minister for the house of our God, and by the good hand of our God on us. They brought us a man of discretions, of the sons of Maheli, the son of Levi, a son of Israel, named Sherebiah, with his sons of kinsmen, 18, also Hashabiah, and with him Jeshiah, of the son of Merari, with his kinsmen and their sons, 20, besides 220 of the temple servants, whom David and his officials had set apart to attend the Levites. These were all the mentions by name. So there are approximately another 262 people added into it. Those are the Levites. So when he initially actually gathered the people who were willing to go back to Jerusalem, and when he reached the river Ahava, he realized that, wait a second, let's just check our people. Wait, there's no Levites? He just realized that there's no Levites. Remember, as I just mentioned when I was going over the family of the priest, there are two things that must happen in order to become a priest. One, you have to be part of the Levites. And two, you have to be the descendants of Aaron to become a priest. Not anyone can become a priest, right? But priest does their own things, right? But there are other Levites who serves in the temple to take care of the little things. Not the priest do, but the other Levites. Because Levites is dedicated to serve the temple, right? Just like the priest is designated to do the work of the priest, the rest of the Levites are the only people who can serve in the temple side. But there was a nobody from Levites who's willing to go back to Jerusalem. This is a kind of a surprising thing to us. Levites should be the one who's willing to go back to Jerusalem and served in the temple, but they're the one who does not show up. It's like this. Let's rebuild the church, but all the leaders and the pastors are missing. All just general people are just gathered. Yeah, let's just rebuild the church, but there's no leaders. What happened? Where's the pastor? They're all missing. Interesting part is this. I gathered them to the river that runs to Ahava. Ahava. You probably have seen lotions and some, the products, the soaps or some shampoos and some women's, creams and stuff like that. I don't know if you ever seen the product Ahava. Ahava is a very, very famous product, and it's a very, very good product, by the way. It's very expensive. And if you ever actually go to Israel, we will go to Israel. When we go to Israel, you will find the product of Ahava because this is very, very well known and it's very, very good brand. And Ahava means love in Hebrew. Love. Ohev is actually the noun, love. Ahava means love. So when he reached Ahava River, why actually gathered there? Because they want to go back to Jerusalem. Why do they want to go back to Jerusalem? Because they love to rebuild the temple, because they want to serve the Lord, because they want to actually love their own people and their God. And that's when he reached Ahava River. And then he looked and realized that there's no Levi. So he called the Levites. He sent his people and encouraged them to go back with them. And later, verse 18 says, "And by the good hand of our God on us, not because he was diligent, but God's hands was with him. They brought us a man of discretions of the sons of Mahili, the sons of Levi, son of Israel, named Sherebiah, with his sons and kinsmen." 18. So God really touched their heart and willing to go back with Ezra. So as I mentioned, later on, there are about additional 262 people joined with Ezra. So now he has a complete of a people who's willing to go back to Jerusalem. So total of a people who might have actually come with Ezra was about 1,777 people came with Ezra. Quite a big crowd. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river Ahava, that we might humble ourselves before our God and seek from him a safe journey for ourselves, our children's, and our goods. For I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen to protect us against the enemy on our way, since we had told the king, "The hand of our God is for good on all who seek him, and the power of his wrath is against all who forsake him." So we fasted and implored our God for this, and he listened to our entreaty. So Ezra did not ask any protections or sent with any soldiers to protect them at all. Once again, you have to understand this, and we just talked about this, when we were going over story of Genesis. When God actually told Abraham, when he was at Ur, "Go to the place where I direct you to go." So when God was directing him to go to a land of Canaan, for us, we're just thinking, okay, God just telling him to just move from one place to another town. No big deal. But you have to understand this very, very carefully. In the ancient time, even in this time that we're just learning, moving from one town to another town is risking your life. Because there is no security whatsoever. Anyone could just come and attack you and take everything you have. You can't do anything. They can kill you. You can't do anything. There's no protection whatsoever. So you have to risk your life and risk of everything what you have to moving from one place to another place. Especially large group of people carrying gold and silver. It is not an easy task for them. But he says, Ezra says, I was ashamed to ask the king for a band of soldiers and horsemen to protect us against the enemy on our way, since we had told the king. So Ezra told the king, I can't ask you anything. I'm not going to ask you anything because God will protect us. That's okay. You don't need to really just protect us. Our God will protect us. It's the faith that he has. God will protect us. Because he told the king, how did he tell? The hand of our God is for good on all who seek him, and the power of his wrath is against all who forsake him. God's hands will be with us on our journey to Jerusalem. So he literally just told the kings beforehand. So he didn't ask any soldiers or a band of people to protect them against from their enemies. So we fasted and implored our God for this, and he listens to our entreaty. So what did he do? He fasted and prayed to the Lord to protect them and guard him. So before they just moved on their journey, he fasted and everyone fasted and also prayed to the Lord for their protection. Then I set apart 12 of the leading priests, Sherebiah, Hashabiah, 10 of their kinsmen with them, and I weighed out to them the silver and the gold and the vessels, the offering for the house of our God, that the king and his counselor and his lord of all Israel were present had offer. I weighed out into their hand 650 talents of silvers and silver vessels worth 200 talents, and 100 talents of gold, 20 bowls of gold worth 1,000 derricks, and 2 vessels of a fine bright bronze as precious as gold. And I said to them, you are holy to the Lord, and the vessels are holy, and the silver and the gold are a freewill offering to the Lord, God of our fathers. Guard them and keep them until you weight them before the chief priest and the Levites and the heads of fathers' houses in Israel at Jerusalem, within the chamber of the house of the Lord. So the priest and the Levites took over the weight of the silver and the gold and the vessels, and bring them to Jerusalem, to the house of our God. Then we departed from the river Ahava on the 12th day of the first month to go on Jerusalem. The hand of our God was on us, and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy, from ambush by the way. We came to Jerusalem, and there we remained 3 days. On the 4th day, within the house of our God, the silver and the gold and the vessels were weighed into the hands of Meremoth, the priest, the sons of Uriah. With him was Eleazar, the son of Phinehas, and with them were the Levites. Zozabad, the son of Jeshua, Noadiah, the sons of Binui. The whole was counted and weighted, and the weight of everything was recorded. At that time, those who had come from captivity, the returned exiles, offered burnt offering to the God of Israel, 12 bulls of all Israel, 96 rams and 77 lambs, and as a sin offering 12 male goats. All this was burnt offering to the Lord. They also delivered the king's commissions to the king's straps and to the governors of the province beyond the river, and they aided the people and the house of God. So when they were leaving, they were literally just carrying lots of silvers and gold and also bronze and vessels and all kinds of things. And when he was actually leaving the Babylon, he recorded everything what they were carrying. Make sure nothing is missed. And by the time they actually arrived in Jerusalem, first of all, God's hands was with them as they prayed to the Lord to protect them. So there was no fuss or any battles along the way from, on their journey from Babylonia to Jerusalem, because God protected them and guarded them. And when they arrived, they literally just stayed for 3 days. And the fourth day, they went out and remeasured and recounted everything what they counted before they left Babylon, making sure everything what they carried is safely arrived in Jerusalem. And everything counted exactly what was accounted before they left. And then, first thing they did was they gave the burnt offerings, and then they gave sin offering. That's the first thing that they did. Burnt offering and sin offering. And then they also gave the king's straps to the governors and the province beyond the rivers, making sure that as Artaxerxes ordered, to help them to just to serve and aided the people and the house of the God. In chapter 9, after these things had been done, the officials approached me and said, "The people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands with their abominations from the Canaanites and Hittites and Perizzites and Jebusites and Ammonites and Moabites and Egyptians and the Amorites. For they have taken some of their daughters to be wives for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy race has mixed itself with the people of the lands, and in this fatherlessness, and the hand of the officials and chief men has been foremost." As soon as I heard this, I tore my garment and cloth, and pulled hair from my head and beard, set a pelt. Then all who trembled at the word of the God of Israel, because of the faithlessness of the returned exile, gathered around me, while I set a pelt until the evening sacrifice. And at the evening sacrifice I rose from my fasting with my garment and my cloth torn, and fell upon my knees, and spread out my hands to the Lord my God, saying, "O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift my face to you. My God, for our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has mounted up to the heavens. From the days of our fathers to this day we have been in great guilt. As for our iniquities, we, our kings and our priests, have been given into the hands of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to captivity, to plundering, and to utter shames, as it is today. But now, for a brief moment, favor has been showed by the Lord our God to leave us a remnant and to give us a secure hold within his holy place, that our God may brighten our eyes and grant us a little reviving in our slavery, for we are slaves. Yet our God has not forsaken us in our slavery, but has extended to us his steadfast love before the kings of Persia, to grant us some reviving, to set up the house of our God, to repair its ruin, and to give us protections in Judea and Jerusalem. And now, O our God, what shall we say after this? For we have forsaken your commandments, which you commanded us by your servants, the prophets, saying, "The land that you are entering to take possessions of it is the land impure with the impurity of the people of the land. with their abominations that have filled it from end to end with their uncleanness. Therefore, do not give your daughters to their sons, and neither take their daughters for your sons, and never seek their place a peace or prosperity, that you may be strong and eat the goods of the land, and leave it for an inheritance to your children forever. And after all that has come upon us for our evil deeds and our great guilt, seeing that you, our God, have punished us less than our iniquities deserved, and have given us such a remnant as this, shall we break your commandments again and intermarry with the people who practice these abominations? Would you not be angry with us until you consumed us, so that there should be no remnant, nor any to escape? O Lord, God of Israel, you are just. For we are left a remnant that has escaped as it is today. Behold, we are therefore you in our guilt, for none can stand before you because of this. Now, let's think about this for a moment. How many years had passed from the time when they came back from Israel, from Babylon? So, from the time when they came back from Babylon's, what year was it again? BC? Yeah, when they came back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple, that year was 536, right? That was a 536. And now, what year is it now? They're at right now? Currently, 500, almost 80 years had passed from the time they actually came back from Babylon, right? And then, almost 60 years after they rebuilt the temple. And what happened? They forgot everything what they did, and they came back to where they were before the fall of Jerusalem again. They're intermarried with pagans and the people of that land, just like what they did when they actually came to Canaan, right? After the journey from Egypt to Canaan, they started to intermarry. So what's wrong with the intermarriage? What's wrong with it? When you think about it, we just have to think about this for a moment. When we read the Bible, we actually have seen many people who are intermarried, right? Moses and Ruth, right? We have seen many people intermarried. And King David came from line of Ruth, right? She was a Canaanite. But what's wrong with the intermarriage? And as you pointed out, God actually forbade to marry with people of a Canaan because they worship other gods. And the women are usually the one who entice their husband to believe in the God they serve. And one good examples that we have seen in the Bible was the King Solomon. Because at the very beginning, when he became a king, he was faithful to God. But after he started to marry with all different queens or the princesses of the countries, all the wives of Solomon turned his heart to worship other idol. And he became the examples of it. Right? And God actually told him not to do this. But what about Ruth? Even though she was a Canaanite woman, did she actually turn her husband to worship her God? Or Ruth actually served the God of Israel? Ruth served the God of Israel. Interesting part here is this. Let's go back. Chapter 9, verse 2 says this. For they have forsaken some of their daughters to be wives for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy race has mixed itself with the people of the lands. And in this faithlessness, the hand of the officials and chief men has been foremost. Which means leaders of the Israel was in the front line to marry with pagans. It's always corruptions happens at the top, right? We don't know why, but usually the corruptions happen at the top. And no exceptions. As you can see here, the officials and the chief man has been the foremost. They're in the very front line, to married with the pagans. And soon as Ezra heard of this news, he was literally torn apart his clothes, and he started to repent. He was so shameful to really lift his face, and he said, "What have you done?" And the way he actually says this, verse 5, starting from verse 4. Then all who trembled at the word of the God of Israel because of the faithlessness of the returned exile gather around me while I sat upheld until the evening sacrifice. And at the evening sacrifice I rose from my fastings with my garment and my cloak torn, and fell upon my knees and spread out my hands to the Lord my God, saying, O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift my face to you, my God, for our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has mounted up to the heavens. From the days of our fathers for this day we have been in great guilt, and for our iniquities our kings and our priests have been given into the hands of the kings of the lands, and to the swords, to captivities, to plundering, and to utter shame, as it is today. But now, for a brief moment, favor has been shown by the Lord our God to leave us a remnant and to give us a secure hold within his holy place, that our God may brighten our eyes and grant us a little reviving in our slavery. For we are slaves, yet our God has not forsaken us in our slavery, but has extended to us his steadfast love before the kings of Persia, to grant us some reviving, to set up the house of our God, to repair its ruin, and to give us protections in Judea and Jerusalem. And now, O our God, what shall we say after this? For we have forsaken your commandments, which your commandment by your servant the prophet, saying, the land that were that you are entering to take possession of it. Is the land impure with the impurity of the people of the lands, with their abominations that have filled it from end to end with your uncleanness? Now, I'm going to ask you this for a moment. Why do you think they are actually intermarried? Is that because the love has no borderline? Safe? I'm sure there are a variety of reasons why, right? But this is what I would say. The main reason why actually they didn't mind intermarried is because of, first of all, they don't know what God said. They have no idea what the law of Moses says. Because in the law of Moses, they forbade to intermarry. But if you don't know the Lord, and if you don't know the law of Moses, you wouldn't mind married to anyone you love. Right? And I would say, main reason why they married with the people in the land of Canaan is because, first of all, they don't know the God's word. So they would not mind to marry. And I think that is the main reason. And they don't know that it's a sin. And obviously, Exodus chapter, 34 says about this, the law is a forbid that they're not supposed to marry with the people of Canaan. And verse 13 says, and after all that has come upon us for our evil deed and for our great guilt, seeing that you, our God, have punished us less than our iniquities deserved and have given us such a remnant as this. So Ezra is afraid that now, because of what they're actually doing, Israel have no reason to really just to pray to God to protect them, because they were going back to what they were before the Judah and before the Jerusalem was destroyed. And God finally spared some of the small number of people in Babylon, and God actually brought them back to Jerusalem, and they corrupted again. So, what does this show ultimately? What does it show? As I mentioned many times, this is literally the nature of a human. This is the nature of a human. What does it show? We cannot be righteous. No matter how hard we try, it's just a short term that we can fix ourselves. However, we will corrupt. Why? Because our heart is evil. There's nothing good in us. If we can practice the law and if we can just be righteous by ourselves, Bible tells us that we all fail, because that's who we are. What does it ultimately show? No matter how hard we try, we will eventually fail. Therefore, there is no way for us to practicing the law to become a righteous person. Therefore, God is showing it doesn't matter the generations. and years and who you are doesn't change. It's the human nature that we are sinner and we will never change. Therefore, Jesus has to come to save us. Not by your practice, not by doing things. We are incapable of become righteous ourselves. Therefore, Jesus has to come. So the Old Testament is literally showing the human history, how men have practiced and worked hard and tried, but we all failed. Years after years, one people over another people, we all failed. No matter who we are, we all failed. So literally, Old Testament show us we cannot be righteous by ourselves, is what the Bible is really teaching us. Thousands of years you have tried, but you all failed, one after another. I'm showing you the entire history, how man has failed. Therefore, give up. Don't ever think that you can actually do it by yourself, because you will fail, is what the Bible is really teaching us. Chapter 10. While Ezra prayed and made confessions, weeping, casting himself down before the house of God, a very great assembly of men, women, and children gathered to him out of Israel. For the people wept bitterly. And Shechaniah, the son of Jehiel, of the sons of Elam, addressed Ezra. We have a broken faith with our God, and have married a foreign woman from the people of the land. But even now, there is hope for Israel in spite of this. Therefore, let us make a covenant with our God to put away all these wives and their children, according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those who tremble at the commandments of our God. And let it be done according to the law. Arise, for it is your task, and we are with you. Be strong and do it. Then Ezra arose and made the leading priests and Levites and all Israel take an oath that they would do as had been said. So they took the oath. Then Ezra withdrew from before the house of God and went to the chamber of Jehohanan, the son of Eliashib, where he spent the night, neither eating bread nor drinking water, for he was mourning over the faithlessness of the exiles. And proclamations was made throughout the Judah and Jerusalem to all returned exiles that they should assemble at Jerusalem, and that if anyone did not come within 3 days by order of the officials and elders, all this property should be forfeited, and he himself banned from the congregations of the exiles. Then all the men of Judah and Benjamin assembled at Jerusalem within the 3 days. It was the 9th month, on the 12th day of the month. And all the people sat in the open square before the house of God, trembling because of this matters and because of the heavy rain. And Ezra the priest stood and said to them, You have a broken faith and married a foreign woman, so increase the guilt of Israel. Now then make confessions to the Lord, the God of your fathers, and do his will. Separate yourself from the people of the land and from the foreign wives. Then all the assembly answered with a loud voice, It is so. We must do as you have said, but the people are many, and it is a time of heavy rains. We cannot stand in the open, nor is this a task for 1 day or for 2, for we have greatly transgressed in this matter. Let our officials stand for the whole assembly. Let all in our cities who have taken foreign wives come at appointed time, and with them the elders and judges of every city, until the fierce wrath of our God over this matter is turned away from us. Only Jonathan, the son of Asahel, and Jazaiah, the son of Tikvah, opposed this, and Meshullam and Shabbathai and Levi supported them. Then the returned exile did so. Ezra the priest, the selected men, heads of a father's house, according to their father's house, each of them designated by name. On the first day of the 10th month, they sat down to examine the matters, and by the first day of the first month they had come to end of all the men who had married a foreign woman. Now, there were found some of the sons of the priest who had married foreign women, Maaseiah, Eleazar, Zarib, and Gedaliah, some of the sons of Jeshua, the son of Zozadak, and his brothers. They pledged themselves to put away their wives, and their guilt offering was a ram of a flock for their guilt. Of the sons of Immer, Hanani and Zebadiah. Of the sons of Harim, Maaseiah, Elijah, Shemaiah, Jehiel, and Uzziah. Of the sons of Pashur and Elionai, Masenai, Ishmael, Nethanel, and Zozabad, and Elasa. Of the Levites, Zozabad and Shimei and Kaliah, that is Kelita, and Pethiah, Judah, and Eleazar, the son of the singers, Eliashib of the gatekeeper, Shallum, Telem, and Uri, and of Israel, the sons of Parosh, Ramiah, Itziah, Melchijah, and Mijamin, Eleazar, Hashabiah, and Benaiah. Of the sons of Elam, Methaniah, Zechariah, Zehiel, Abdi, Zeramoth, and Elijah. Of the sons of Jatu, Elionai, Eliashib, Metani, Jeremoth, Zabad, Aziza. Of the sons of Bebai were Jehohanan, Hananiah, Zebiah, and Athalah. Of the sons of Benai were Meshullam, Maluch, Adiah, Jashub, Sheals, and Zeramoth. Of the sons of Pahath Moab, Adnah, Chelal, Benaiah, Messiah, Metaniah, Bezalel, and Benui, and Manasseh. Of the sons of Harim, Eleazar, Ishijah, and Malchijah, Shemaiah, Shimeon, Benjamin, Maluch, and Shemariah. Of the sons of Hashum, and Metanai, Matatha, Zebad, Elipelet, and Jeremiah, Manasseh, and Shimei. Of the sons of Bani, Madani, Amran, Uels, Benaiah, Bediah, Chelui, and Benaiah, and Merimoth, Eliashib, Metaniah, and Mataneh. Josh. Of the sons of Binui, Shimei, Shelmiah, Nathan, Adaniah, Meknadebai, and Shashai, Sharai, Azraels, and Shelemiah, and Shemariah, Shallum, and Amariah, and Joseph. Of the sons of Nebo, Jael, Methiah, Zobed, Zobina, Zabdi, Joels, and Benaiah. All these had married foreign women, and some of the women had even borne children. Oh my God, it's so hard to even pronounce your name. But anyway, there are many, many people who married with the foreign women. But one thing that we need to keep in mind, these many people who married with the women's, and at the end of as Ezra mentioned in verse 44, the some of the women had even born children. So they're not only married to a foreign woman, but they also have a children. They are forced to be divorced. This is important for us to remember because this story is actually connected with Nehemiah, which we'll cover next week. Why Nehemiah's story continues, because it started from here. They're forced to be divorced. They have a family. Imagine, you are literally just forced to divorce with the woman who are married. Is it easy? Just because hey, you just against the law, so just divorce. It's not that easy. You are separating family here, right? It's a very hard. It's not an easy task for people to just divorce because they have to keep the law. For them, it is very difficult. What about the woman's family? What a disaster is this? And one guy just came from Babylon and just proclaiming that, hey, you just go against the laws and you have to divorce? So their family was separated because of this man who actually came from Babylon and literally separated family. What do you think of the family of the women from this foreign country? Do you think they were happy? I'm sure they were very mad. Very mad. So later on, if we actually study the Nehemiah later on come to restore the walls of Jerusalem. Bible does not mention why the wall was actually torn down. But most likely, most likely, this foreign woman's family were furious and they tried to destroy the Jerusalem. They attacked. They most likely torn down the walls because of what happened at the time of Ezra. And you could imagine. But literally, Ezra was kind of person who go by the rule. He wanted to stick to the law of God because even if it's a very difficult task for separating the family, it is better to do this than our entire Israel be destroyed. I know it's difficult, but we have to do this because God has been gracious to us and he restored us with the small amount of remnant from Babylon, and we cannot be destroyed again. If God destroy us, we will be end of our, Israel. So let's not do that. Let's just sacrifice a small portions of our family, but let's just restore and keep our people. That's literally what he meant. And Ezra is the one who actually came to teach the law of Moses. And if he's the one who actually came to teach the law of Moses, he had to do what he had to do. Stick to the law of Moses. And Ezra did what he did. Not because he was happy to separate the family, but because he wants to spare his country and his people. And this is better to do this than destroy all of us. So, as you can see here, it's very important for us to really remember the entire book of Ezra, what journey they have gone through from the time when they came back from Babylon and how they restored the temples and what difficulty they have gone through. But at the same time, at the end of the Ezra, we can see they corrupted again and they go against the God's law again. So this shows the entire cycle. And as I mentioned, why God is showing the story in the book of Ezra, and literally just confirming us, no matter how hard we try, we corrupt, we sin against the God, and there's no way that we can try to gain the righteousness by ourselves and by our work, but by the grace of God. That's why Jesus has to come to save us. That's literally the entire story of our failure. How hard we try, we fail again. All right? So that's the story of Ezra, and I hope, and I just gave you enough the story and the background, and it took us a little bit of a journey to go back and forth between the multiple books, but now I hope you have a good understanding of where we are today.